Hello, everyone. My name is Diana. This is part two, my friendship with Melissa. So it was, I spent 17 years doing the transcriptions for Alan, and I'm just going along. On March 6th, I got an email at about 10:30 in the morning, and from Alan Watt's email, Alan Watt cutting through at yahoo.com. Saying, may I have your phone number? Thank you. And I didn't quite know what to even think of this. Right? Obviously, Alan had sent me emails from time to time, was generally, I would send the transcripts and he would say, thank you, much appreciated. And that's about it. Every once in a while, he might, email me something like, this is a Scottish slang word and this is how you spell it. Something like that. Not a whole lot of personal chit chat back and forth, and that was okay. But this was, may I have your phone number? Thank you. I just couldn't even fathom what he would want to talk to me about. I was a little flattered, and I didn't know what to think. So I was gonna sat on it because it was a Saturday, and I thought, well, I'll wait till Monday. Well, I didn't reply, and so by about 5 o'clock that afternoon, I got another email saying, yeah. Instead of me getting your phone number, would you mind calling me and put the phone number in the email? And I'm like, wow, okay. And this is it was signed Bev, and I'm like, well, who the heck is Bev? But it's regarding Alan. So I was really perplexed. I didn't know what to think, and I believe I called later that evening because I remember the shock, the sadness. It was about 7 o'clock at night. So anyway, Bev introduced herself and told me what had happened. She told me that Alan had died, that she was asleep in bed. She heard a noise, him falling, and that she found him on the floor next to the bed reaching for a book. And I remember when she said that, I was like, oh, well, I guess that makes sense. Alan reaching for a book, you know. But I don't even remember what else was discussed. I went into shock, and I don't think the conversation was more than five, maximum 10 minutes. And so that's how I learned about Alan's death. But time moved along, and Melissa and I started getting to know each other. Over the weeks, I don't think I heard from her or talked to her for a month or two. I didn't know her, we weren't friends, but she called me a few times. And so in that process, this is, well, how did you meet Alan and move there and come to be his girlfriend and live with him and all that? And she told me the story that she had heard him on, I always want to say radio show, but what I mean to say is, his podcast and his broadcast is what he would call it. And that she called him, they got to know each other. I think she told me she fell in love with him right away, and that eventually she moved up there. And when she's telling me this, I was like, oh my goodness, Melissa, you're never going to believe this, but I had the exact same idea. Not that I had fallen in love with Alan, but I really respected him and thought, wow, he would be awesome to know and have as a partner. But I was already living with my boyfriend for years and was like, well, how is this going to work? Obviously I can't just go up there. I'd have to call him and get to know him. And in that process, I've got to at some point visit him. And then after that, if things work out, move up there. So I'm visualizing the whole thing and thinking, well, how am I gonna tell my boyfriend, yeah, I want to go visit another man in another country because I kind of got a crush on him, and I realized, no, Diana, that's not gonna work, just listen to him, learn from him, and ultimately I wound up doing the transcriptions. But I told Melissa I had the exact same idea. I mean, I even visualized what I'd have to do here in my house, break up with my boyfriend, whatever. All the little details went through my head over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, and I finally realized, no, that's not what's gonna happen. So, but I just found it was fascinating. And so time moves on, and I had been living in my head for 15 years, as Alan talks about living in your head, because he teaches you so much. There's not a whole lot of people that you can talk to about his information, how the world is set up and how it's structured and et cetera, et cetera. And so after 15 years, I mean, yes, I had my boyfriend. He wasn't really interested. People I worked with, not really awake. But I was like, oh my gosh, not only am I going to have an awake friend, I hoped. It's Alan's woman. I mean, not only is she weak, but she knows him and his information. And so I was thrilled and I was like, okay, Diana, calm yourself down. She's got a lot going on. The love of her life just died. She's got to close out a house, do a funeral or whatever, move to wherever she's going to move. So I had to kind of put my excitement on hold, but I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be friends with Alan's woman. My hope was, so time's moving on. I think it was spring, summer of 21. We're getting to know each other. I noticed something odd when we would talk, that whatever topic we were talking about, she'd always insert a paragraph or two of what Alan would have said, almost identical to what he would have said on one of his shows. And just the same way that Alan would say it. And I was like, what does she think I don't know what Alan talked about? I mean, I transcribed for 17 years. I know these topics. I know the subject. I mean, it just seemed unnatural to me. I just thought that she would assume that I would understand and not need to be instructed, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I never said anything to her about it. I just thought it was a really unnatural way to have a conversation. And I also realized too that when I was doing the transcriptions that I did that at first as well. When I would try to talk about something, I would try to say it in the exact same way Alan did. And so I thought, well, I guess she's just around him so much and she's, not really had an opportunity to talk with other people, obviously with Alan, but but she just hadn't found her voice yet in the way that I did after doing the transcriptions. It's a little off-putting, but I just kind of let it lie. And I noticed it went on for a very long time. And it would always just kind of, and I'd say, Melissa, yeah, I did the transcripts. You remember I did the transcripts, right? And, I don't even remember what her response was, but I always just felt as though she wanted to tutor me, so to speak. And I'm thinking, I already know it. Thank you, so it's at this point that she's grieving, closing out their house. She's packing, figuring out where to live. She sent me a handwritten letter telling me that she was going to move to her family in Texas. I was thrilled for her. It was COVID, and I thought that's probably the best place to be is with your family. And I also was thinking, they live on donations. I don't know what her financial situation is, but obviously Alan's gone. Let me send her some money to help her with the move. So I sent $2,000. And I didn't hear much from her for the first year. I didn't expect to. She had a lot to deal with, and I didn't even know her last name for about the first year. But as excited as I was to have a friendship with her, I also knew, you know what? Alan's dead. She's got to close up the house. She's got to cross the border with an entire household of stuff during the height of COVID and lockdown madness and mask madness. And I was like, you know what, Dinah, just calm yourself down. Focus on the transcripts. When you hear from her, you'll hear from her. I didn't call her, obviously, because all they had was a landline. So that's kind of what about the first 6 months or a year was, is me kind of sitting around anxious, waiting for her to call, you know? So as I would get some of those calls, we were getting to know each other. And Melissa had told me that she felt that Alan was just as important as Jesus. And when she said that, I kind of hesitated. Now, at that time, I was not a baptized Christian. I was not saved. I did not have a relationship with Jesus. And it's still kind of, I was like, no, 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 no. But and I said, well, yeah, I think I wanted to, I didn't want to have a little disagreement. Not that I disagreed with her, but I said, yeah, Alan is important. He can wake up the world. So, in that sense, I agreed with her. And so, because Alan's information affected me profoundly, I went from being incredibly naive and uninformed to understanding. I like to say that Alan gave me a better than university education. I will still say that to this day. So, but that always struck me that he was just as important as Jesus. And I was like, wow, okay. And that was my first real clue that she was a Christian. I think I may have asked her or she may have offered. I don't remember. I was like, oh, wow, she's talking about Jesus. She must be a Christian. Now, my husband's a baptized Christian. We didn't really talk about Jesus or the Bible much, but here I am interacting with Melissa. She's talking about, so I'm like, oh, wow. So time's moving along, and she was telling me about how a few months before Alan passed away, that the two of them had talked about and decided on getting a cell phone. So they went to, I forget what store it was, and the store had a deal going that day. So they got a cell phone and a tablet. And she's telling me about how when they got home and they're turning them on and setting them up and all that, that her and Alan had arguments, not over them, but just setting them up. And she felt like the technology did that. And I said to her, I said, Melissa, it happens to all of us. When you get a new piece of technology, you don't understand how it works. It takes a while to find the groove of it. And it causes anxiety and exasperation. And if the two of you are working on it together, I could see how you have arguments. And she's like, oh, no, 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 that wasn't it. It was the technology itself. And I still look back and think about that now and think, well, did you think the technology was sending a little ray into your brains and that's why you were arguing? No, it's because you don't understand what you're doing. Right. But she disagreed with me and I thought, well, okay, she's been out of the loop for 15 years, so I'm not gonna press it. But the thing that got me was I always remembered how often and how vehemently Alan had talked about not ever having a cell phone. And I thought, well, why did he change his mind? I don't know what's going on. I think Melissa told me something. I can't remember what it was, just that they realized that they needed to step into the future or something. I don't remember. But I was like, no, I was like, that's awesome because you're in the process of moving and I didn't know if you were going to have a landline at your Texas house. And so I was just excited I was going to be able to contact her wherever she might be, even though I didn't call her because I knew she was so busy and so preoccupied and so much was going on. I always waited for her to call me. So And then time's rolling on, and she was telling me about how, or she was emailing me, and this is how I have the timeline going here as I went back through all of our emails. So this is now the time period where, for some reason, PayPal stopped doing donations for Alan's website, and so Melissa had to take the time to figure out what company, where, when, why, and how, and and I remember thinking, I was kind of. I was kind of relieved to not be sending donations anymore. I'd been sending $100 a month to Alan for 17 years. And I remember thinking, well, I'm not responsible to support your woman. Yeah, I wanted to be friends with her, but I didn't want to feel like I had to donate as well. I thought, this is her life, it's her path, she'll find her way. But as we got to know each other, and I'm thinking, well, she is posting his talks still. She is this, she is that. And so I thought, well, yeah, I think it was about 3, 4 months after we met. I thought, I'll send $50 a month. And she selected Stripe as the company for her donations. And I was thrilled because I used to send $100 cash per month through the snail mail up to Alan. And but now I could just subscribe and it was handled. So it was convenient, you know, and nice. And then after it was about 3 more months after that, we got to know each other more and she was telling me what's going on in her life, et cetera, and all the chaos and unsettledness. I thought, oh, okay, well, I sent Alan $100 a month. I guess I can do Melissa as well because she's maintaining the website. She's forwarding his work. I'm still doing the transcripts, but I had a little bit of a because I'm like, well, I'm not really learning anything extra or new anymore because Alan's not doing talks anymore. It was still the height of COVID. And I am grateful that Melissa was around because we had to go to other websites and other podcasters to figure out what was going on. Supply chain breakdown. There was Dell Big Tree and I can't even remember all the different people. And so we could bat things back and forth with each other and see how valid they were. So it's really grateful for them. I think, well, okay, I'll send you $100 a month as well. So it turns into the summer, fall of 2021. She finally crosses the border. And I remember when we were talking about it, this was when I discovered that she was not a Canadian citizen. And I remember saying to her, I said, well, that's fantastic because as you're crossing the border, you said, look, I'm an American citizen. You got to let me through. So, so she crosses the border. I don't even remember how she traveled. I think it was a bus. I can't recall. But she gets down to Texas to her parents' home. Her dad and her brother were there. Her father was ill. Her brother was taking care of him. And so she's moving in and getting settled, and at the same time reuniting with her family and old friends, but also taking care of her father who was sick. And so I'm like, wow, that's a lot to deal with. So I didn't call her. I waited for her to call me. I didn't want to get in the way of, it's just a lot going on. And so time's moving on. It's still summer, fall of 21. And then she starts telling me about how DeBess, this woman who has a BitChute channel who's been doing Alan Watt videos for years and years and years and years and years, maybe I think they were 10 to 15-minute videos. She would take a clip of Alan, put video to it, and post it. And at the time, I think she had 40 or 50,000 subscribers. Um, and that DeBess somehow, Alan or Melissa and DeBess were communicating, and DeBess decided to move to Texas to help Melissa. And I was like, that's great. And Melissa's telling or emailing me, telling me that she's going to drive to the East Coast pick up DeBess and all of her stuff, and then they're going to drive back together. And I was like, wow, you're really putting a lot on your plate. I mean, with all this stuff you've got going on and trying to help your father and reunite and get settled and mourn Alan. But I was like, wow, okay, do what you're gonna do. It's your path, it's your life. So, time's moving on again, more conversations, getting to know each other. And she's telling me about DeBess, what DeBess had done, all the videos, and I told her, I said, Melissa, I'm super excited. Not only am I going to have you, Alan's woman, as a friend, hopefully, but now there's DeBess. My gosh, I'm not just going to have one awake friend, but I'm going to have two awake friends, and they're both going to be women. We're all going to know Alan Watts stuff. And I said to her, I said, Melissa, my gosh, I said, we've got you with Alan's audio. The best with video or the capacity to make video. And there's me with the printed word, the transcriptions. I said, the three of us together we could really kick butt and forward Alan's work in whatever creative way we're going to do this. And Melissa agreed. We were both just really excited for what the future held and how we could forward Alan's work as a group, as a team. And now time rolls on again, and she sent me an email. This is December of 21, that a young man by the name of Kevin, who's also has the name Weston. His public name is Weston. His personal name is Kevin. I'm like, because DeBess has an actual real name as well that I won't divulge here, but so I got Bev Melissa, I got Weston Kevin, I've got DeBess with her name. So as Melissa's talking to me about these two, instead of two names, I got four names floating around, and I'm like, what is? I was like, oh my gosh. Anyway, so Melissa is telling me about Weston. I don't know if y'all remember him. She and Weston did interviews on a show called Dynamic Independence. I think it went on for about a year or so. Melissa, they're not on the website anymore. I'm not really sure why. I believe I talked to her about it, and I think her goal was to obviously propagate Alan's work and talk about Alan, but also about current events of the day. And I think it was her way of trying to attract listeners to the Cutting Through site, which, is totally reasonable. But she's also propagating Alan's work to another audience. And that's where I heard Kevin. Now, I never got to meet Kevin or DeBess ever, which always disappointed me. I didn't want to, I think I brought it up to Melissa once or twice. I'd really love to talk to DeBess or Kevin. And I never got to, and it always confused me as to why, but that was okay. I had her for a friend, and again, it's still in this first year time period where I'm not calling her. I'm waiting for her to call me. So we might talk once every 4 or 6 or 8 weeks. But we emailed back and forth a lot. Not a lot of texting. It was emailing. So time is moving on. It's February 1st, and I don't know what I was thinking about her doing, but I thought, you know what, I gotta why don't I send her a couple $100? She's got a lot going on. She just did this trip across country, whatever. She didn't ask for any money. She didn't really talk about money, but I thought, let me just send her a couple $100. And so she replied saying, thank you so much for the letter and the gift. It was a blessing. And she's saying, if you're around on Thursday, let's talk. We need to catch up. So I'm like, okay, cool, right on. And then 2 days later, which was Thursday, I'm thinking I'm going to get a call, and I got an email. And the first line, she said, I'll call you next week. And I was like, okay, no worries. But then the next line is, that her dad had passed away 3.5 weeks ago, and I was kind of taken aback, and I I remember I remember thinking, wow, 2 days ago, see, this cheerful email, thanks for the money and let's catch up. It came across very cheerful to me. And now I'm finding out your dad's been dead for 3.5 weeks. And I guess in my mind, I had overstepped thinking that we were better friends than I thought. I was like, wow, I would think I would have heard from you a few days after, maybe after the funeral, but nearly a month later. And it just kind of hit me wrong. And I realized, okay, well, I'm not in the foreground of a friendship that I had wished or imagined to be. She's got Kevin there, she's got the best there. That's where her focus is. And I realized, okay, I'm on the back burner. And I was a little disappointed. And I think when we ultimately talked, I said that to her in some way. I said, well, I realize that I'm not, in the foreground, whatever. And she said, oh, no, Diana, I want you to know that you're in the inner circle. And I was like, oh, wow. Oh my gosh. Well, that's awesome. That's excellent. I was like, wow. Made me feel a little better. And so the rest of this email is basically talking about what the family was going through and that she wanted to introduce me to Kevin. And I never did get to meet him personally. I mean, either on the phone or whatever, or Debes. Now that I look back and think about it. So as we're getting to know each other, now it's spring of 22. It's a year after Alan passed. We begin talking about gardening, and I was telling her that I was using raised bed gardens. I'll put a picture up here so y'all can see what kind. Melissa was talking about keyhole gardening, and this was when the supply chain was breaking down. We're all locked in our houses, or the mask business and all that. And so we were worried about food stocks, and I believe I had started my garden, yeah, the spring after Alan died. That summer I started it. So this was my second spring, and my first year was pretty sorry, but the second year I did a lot better. And so we were talking about gardening a lot. She's telling me who she likes on YouTube, etc. So I remember being out in my garden thinking about something that Melissa had told me. She was telling me a little bit about Alan's family life as a child, and that his father was not a nice guy and like actually even evil in some way, and that Alan and his father didn't really, I think they butted heads or something because Alan was so bright, and that his mom tried to buffer things. He had a couple of sisters. But Melissa was telling me that, yeah, Alan told her that Alan's father was a really great gardener, and that he used to go behind the horse and wagons of the day to collect manure from the horses so that he could put it in his garden, and that his dad was a great gardener. And I was like, oh, well, that's awesome, that's cool, because as we're getting to know each other, we're both wanting to I'm actually gardening, she's talking about wanting to get started gardening. So it's this thing that we could bond over. And I remember being out in my garden thinking about this story she told me about. It was about a week later, maybe two. And in that moment, as I was thinking about it, I sensed Alan in spirit was there. He was about 30 feet away. And there was another spirit, which somehow instinctively I knew it was Alan's dad. It's the spirit standing there. I was putting seedlings in the bed, and the spirit's like, well, let me show you something. And in my mind, he showed me, he said, make a trough. He said, lay the seedling in there. and then squish the trough back together. And that way you won't disturb the roots as much. Because what I was doing was just digging a hole, sticking it in, and doing that. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's cool. I guess Melissa was right. His dad was a great gardener, whatever. But I also remembered the aspect of her saying that he was not such a nice guy and that he was evil. And I realized, well, I'm interacting with this and I should not be. And so I said to it, I said, thanks, Alan's dad or whoever you are. I said, I appreciate that, but you got to go. And in that moment, both of them left. The whole time Alan was about 30 feet away and wasn't really communicating with me. And the whole thing must have lasted for maybe only 5 minutes, but I just thought it was very interesting that when I asked what I perceived as a malevolent spirit to leave, both of them did. Because I was thinking, well, Alan's a good guy. Why would he have left? Anyway, it confused me. So time's rolling on. Melissa is, we're still talking about gardening because it's the spring. She says, I got obsessed with container gardens. She's looking into keyhole gardening. She's studying the weather down there, et cetera, et cetera. And, we're just talking about gardening. So as time's moving on, I'm thinking, well, you know what? She's really got a lot going on. It's the 1 year anniversary of Alan dying, the love of her life. She's just cross country with all her stuff. She's not really settled in yet. She had to take care of her father for months, and now he's passed away. So she's mourning him, reconnecting with her childhood girlfriends. She's got Kevin, and DeBess there trying to, it's a lot going on. And so we're talking about, I thought, you know what? I think I want to surprise her. I know she doesn't have a whole lot of money. So I sent her the raised bed, a worm factory, the worms, worm food, amendments for the soil, everything that she would need to get the garden started. And then once the garden is started, has plants in it, the fertilizers that you would need to maintain the garden. So I sent it as a surprise. And that was in the spring and summer of 22. So time's rolling on, and I start reading St. Augustine. And I'll be honest with you, I can't remember the title of it, but I was talking to her about this, and I said I was reading St. Augustine, and then I had run across a paragraph from time to time that just seemed like it was gibberish, that it confused me because I was keeping up with everything until these weird instances. And as I'm going over this paragraph 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times, going, I'm not stupid. I'm keeping up with you, dear. What is this? And it suddenly dawned on me, oh my gosh, this is a way for the author to insert demonic influence upon the reader. And I've just recently understood from someone else that when that happens in a book, that it's code. It's also code for the author when he's talking to other people of the occult or secret societies or the mystery schools, that it's code that they'll understand. And I remember having this realization thing, and at the time I thought, oh, it's like a demonic, it's like a chant or something to mess with me, the reader. And I stood back, I doubted myself, and I thought, well, surely not. And in that moment, Alan was in spirit form standing at my bedside, and he said, Diana, trust yourself. And I went, oh, okay, wow, all right. So I did. And I remember I only went a few more pages in that book. And I thought, why am I reading this if this is written by an occultist and he's sending codes to other occultists? I put it back on the shelf and never went back to it. I always thought that I should, but I never did. So, and so I'm talking to Melissa about this, and I also, after that, I picked up the book Morals and Dogma because I had always wanted to read it. I was always nervous about the fact that I might not understand it. From time to time, I'd open up a page and go, okay, and put it back. But I thought, okay, I'm going to tackle it. I'm going to sit down from the beginning and read through it. And I noticed that the same thing happens in Morals and Dogma, except this time, instead of reading it two, three, four, five times trying to figure it out, I just skirted around it. And I was able to read the whole book that way. And so it's at this point in time, Melissa and I are talking about the supernatural, demonic influence in the world. She's telling me about going to church with her brother, with her great aunt, um, and going to church for, to find some peace and solace when she's grieving Alan or her father. So I'm thinking that Melissa is, she's a Christian. She's doing the Christian thing. I mean, I don't know what she did or didn't do in that regard up in Canada, but here she is in Texas as I'm getting to know her. I'm feeling like I'm learning a little bit about Christianity and that, yeah, there is a supernatural aspect to it. There is demonic involvement in the world. There is spiritual warfare going on. And so I'm starting, and yes, in the past, I have had supernatural experiences, very limited. So I had that knowledge, but now I had someone to talk to about that as well, because there's not a whole lot of people in the world that you can talk to about supernatural experiences. So time's moving on. It's May. And she and I are catching up. We're talking about gardening again. But this time she's telling me that it's going to be this time next year. So she's already been, Alan's already been dead for a year. It's going to be this time next year before she can get her mom and dad's things sorted out from their house and Alan's things sorted out, that she's still not settled. And I'm thinking, wow, that's stressful. You're in a house and the stuff around you is someone else, your mom's, your dad's. I mean, plus all this other stuff. She's really stressed out. And I, that's part of why I sent the gardening equipment to her because I thought, you got so much going on. The garden can be an escape for you. When you get stressed out or you need to get away from the computer, you can go out and put your hands in some soil, your feet in the grass, plant, plant seeds, trim tomato plants, whatever, that it would be an escape for her. And that's why I did that. And so now it's the end of May, and she's emailing telling me that she feels like that she's recovering from a very long illness. And I can understand that. She's had a lot go on for the past year, almost year and a quarter now. She's telling me that she's slept more now than she has in months, and that she's battling someone's demons. And I was like, what is that about? I don't think I really understood at this point in time. And she's saying, thank you for the gardening. It's been helping. So I was relieved and glad that she had that as an escape. It's your money. I don't know what your bank account is, so you do what you're gonna do. But I just thought it was kind of on. So now the summer rolls around, and I receive a frantic phone call. Melissa is having a meltdown about Debess, that Debess is possessed, and Melissa has to deal with her. And that's what this battling someone's demons comment was about earlier. I was like, oh, really? I said, well, if she's possessed, I said, you need to disconnect from her. You need to ask her to leave. You can't. I said, Melissa, you've got so much going on. This is the last thing you need. And Melissa's like, no, she wants to help DeBess and mentioned that they had had an appointment with a pastor and at her church or a church, I don't recall, and that DeBess admitted that she was possessed, but that she didn't want to remedy the situation. And I'm like, well, all the more reason to ask her to leave. She's openly admitting this to you. How are you going to fix her? Because at the time, I didn't know about deliverance ministry. All I had read about was Malachi Martin doing, talking about in the book Hostage to the Devil about exorcism. Something, well, she doesn't want to fix this. Even an exorcism can't change it if you knowingly, willingly want to be possessed. Anyway, this goes on for weeks. Melissa's super stressed out about it, telling me about it. I think we start talking maybe. I'm thinking maybe twice a month, once every couple of weeks. So, like I said, our correspondences were mostly through email. But I think also at this point, text started to be introduced. I think Melissa was getting used to texting, if memory serves. So time's moving on. It's the end of May, and she's telling me that she didn't get enough sleep. This is kind of a recurrent thing that she can't sleep. She doesn't sleep well. Um, that she's going to church with her brother. She's helping to not necessarily take care of her brother, but she's the one that cooks the meals, cleans the house, whatever, because they share a house together. So time's moving on. It's the end of May, and she's telling me that she didn't get enough sleep. This is kind of a recurrent thing that she can't sleep. She doesn't sleep well. Um, that she's going to church with her brother. She's helping to not necessarily take care of her brother, but she's the one that cooks the meals, cleans the house, whatever, because they share a house together. And that she went to see she spent a holiday afternoon with some old childhood girlfriends who are quote unquote awake, but not at all, she says. And here's what she's fascinating stuff that JFK's not dead. Everybody famous as a clone. Ritual child sacrifice under the Vatican. Adrenochrome harvesting. Peyote to break the ego and find God, and everything is a vibration. Melissa says, I could go on and on. So I'm just kind of reading this, I'm thinking, okay, well, at least you have your sense of humor's there. That's great. And at the end of this email, she talks about having to work through her anger at DeBess, months of life battling her demons, produces all her blackmailing behavior that DeBess felt that Melissa should be paying her. And so Melissa suggests that DeBess monetize her channel. And so DeBess did, but now Melissa's talking about how DeBess is using Alan Watt images and positioning herself to look like the official site. And I'm like, well, that's ridiculous because the official site is such a unique look. It's 25 years old. I don't know that anyone could position themselves to be the official site because anyone who knows Alan Watt knows his site. But I guess for maybe new people, I don't know. But so Melissa was really freaked out. And she's talking about how she feels that on the spiritual battlefield that DeBess is a goner. And that Melissa's realized that she was wrapped up in her own ego, thinking that she could show DeBess the errors of DeBess's mind and lead DeBess to true communion with her creator. And I'm like, wow, it's not really your job, but okay, I guess. But, so that's what Melissa was all wrapped up in there. And so now it's June 4th, and she's talking about going to the Crimes Against Humanity, something, and okay, things are moving along. Her and Kevin are going to this conference. She's talking a little bit about gardening. I'm like, oh, okay, great, awesome. It's the next day, July 5th, And now it's the next day. She's a very cheerful. Now it's the next day. Frankly, I'm a very low point just now, and I'm likely overtired and pushing for a year and a half, and and that she can't sleep, but she's grateful she's got the garden as an escape, and she says that they haven't progressed any further on the books. Now, what this is Melissa has decided to take the Cutting Through books, volume 1, 2, and 3, and rework them and instead of being black and white, they're going to be color. And also, in order to not violate, I'm not sure if it's copyright or trademark. I haven't sorted it out in my head yet, but basically, it's where you take the images of something and change it just enough so it's not exactly like the original. And then she's going to um, uh, publish it and have it either the trademark or the copyright in her name so that she now owns it and can sell it and live on that, because I think that's a bulk of what she lives on are the sales of the books. So she said they haven't progressed any further and she's having a call with the designers. So I'm like, oh, okay, wow, that's exciting. And so now I get another call. It's the summer into the fall, and Melissa is calling me several times a week, which is very unlike her. I don't get that much communication, direct phone calls, but now I am over the fact that she's looking at DeBest. So DeBest has now left and gone. And so Melissa is now monitoring DeBest's sites daily to see what's going on. And I said, Melissa, you need to let this go. She tells me the place to look on DeBessa's sites for doxing Melissa. And I'm busy with the transcripts. I'm still doing the 4 or 5 hour shows at the end there. It takes literally an entire week for me to transcribe one show, and I've got 20 or 30 to go. And so I'm like, I'm not gonna do this. I think I pulled it up and looked here and there, didn't find anything. And it didn't seem important to me, but Melissa was just obsessed with filing copyright infringement on DeBessa's sites and forbidding her to post anything Alan Watt. And I was like, Melissa, come on, DeBessa's been doing this for years and years and years and years. Now you're just gonna cut her off. And Melissa, she's positioning herself to look like the, and I was like, okay, you dealt with her, you interacted with her. I don't know anything that went on there other than what you told me, but I just remember thinking, I'm sure DeBess felt it, after doing that for years and years and years. And what I realized was at the time in the summer fall of 2022, I did not look for these things on the internet because I didn't think it was necessary. I thought Melissa was obsessing where she didn't need to. My opinion was, well, if these people are going to believe her, they obviously don't have enough discernment, and why, let them wallow in their own crap together as a group kind of thing. There's nothing you can do to stop it. So I just this past spring of 2025, 3 years after the fact, I thought, why don't I check into that whole DeBest business and see what was going on back then? Now, I looked on BitChute and I couldn't find anything. And one day it occurred, well, why don't I look on YouTube or Odyssey or Rumble and see if there's anything DeBest has put out there? And I did find something. I found DeBest's comments talking back and forth with other people. Now, these are not posted by DeBest. They're posted by someone else. But they took screenshots of what DeBest was communicating with other people and made little videos and put it on this channel. And here's the channel. And so here are some of the communications between DeBest and other people from this time period of summer, fall 2022. So authentic intelligence is saying, DeBest, did you actually get to meet Alan? What a great mind. I'm still mourning his passing. He made so much sense of this crazy world and why it is so. I really do not think he died of natural causes, considering he was ripping the pandemic to shreds with 4-hour blurbs at the end there. I still listen to him regularly. I have a lot of files downloaded. And so DeBest replies and says, I never physically met Alan. However, we communicated for many years via email, letters, and phone calls as the pandemic started. He also put me on his RBN broadcasts. Alan was killed, in my opinion. I read that. I was like, what? Wow. Just as the pandemic began to roll out. Alan began calling me at home just before this happened. God bless this man and curse those who are profiting and who I believe contributed to his death. And so I'm like, well, who do you think that is? Because the only person you've really interacted with was Melissa and Kevin wasn't there, Melissa was. So I'm like, okay, well, the best thinks something. I don't know if I agree or not. So I moved down to the next one. The best is responding to a person called Obsolete. She says, don't worry, I won't block you because you bring up pertinent points. It's a tediously long story. I worked with Melissa and Kevin for free and drove from North Carolina to Texas with Melissa. She came to my house in North Carolina, and we drove back in my car because I was devastated to hear of Alan Watts' untimely death. Alan phoned me a few months before he was killed. Ask Melissa, a Seventh-day Adventist follower, then listen to Bill Cooper about the Seventh-day Adventist cult. Then get back with me on this topic. I do not wish to promote Cutting Through the Matrix because Alan Watts' two elderly sisters held the legal rights to his websites. Melissa worked for a big-name Jewish Hollywood producer, Gary Barber, for many years as his secretary. Before infiltrating and eventually taking over the Cutting Through website, Alan had two sisters, one younger than him and the other one older, who had the legal rights to his Cutting Through site, but Melissa stated that they were greedy and that they wouldn't know what to do with it. Now, when I first saw this and read this, I was taken aback because Melissa had told me that she was an editor for writers in Hollywood, not a secretary for a big name Jewish Hollywood producer. That was the first thing that really struck me. Now, I had known about, Melissa had told me about this court battle between herself and Alan's two elderly sisters, so that didn't surprise me. But I got stuck here for a minute going, well, wait a minute. Okay, so now DeBez is told one thing, I'm told the other. Okay, well, let me continue, see what else there is. She continues with this same response here to the same person. I live with Kevin. He was a tenant in my cockroach-laden trailer in Keene, Texas. By the way, Kevin was diagnosed with autism, so he is brilliant in one sphere, math, but easily manipulated overall. He is an idiot savant, legally blind. How do I know all of this? Kevin lived with me in this rundown trailer in my name in Texas. What a fool I was to drive in my car with Melissa, who arrived at my comfy apartment in Raleigh, North Carolina. Watt called on my home landline phone a few months before he was killed. Alan instinctively knew that his days were numbered. Anyway, I produced and uploaded many Cutting Through vids here on BitChute, many of which I have since deleted because I truly wish to promote Alan's legacy. There's so much more I could say. What else do you wish to know, since I'm spilling my guts out? Alan was the real deal, and I respect his work, always. However, I cannot climb on board to this ulterior, Hollywood, manipulative, involving donations and money-making, only because Melissa never married, and as per her confession to me personally, she intentionally aborted her child with this guy because he was going out with other women. Shame. So I was a little shocked here too because Melissa told me that she was married. Now, DeBess is saying that she's not. And the fact that these people are so convinced that Alan was killed, that was another thing that kind of took me aback. This is 3 months ago, not 3 years ago. So I'm like thinking, well, wow, okay. Melissa was not honest or sincere with me, at least about her job. She did tell me about the court case, but I'm like, wow, why would Melissa do that? So I'm continuing to look at these things on this channel. So this is DeBess responding to this person called The Age of Irony. He says, still miss Alan. I hope he's enjoying life in paradise. He was an excellent teacher. DeBess says, yes, and Alan started calling me at home 6 months or so before he was murdered. We communicated via emails and letters for many, many years before that. Too bad that Melissa, MK Ultra asset, quickly had Alan's body cremated, rather than respecting his wishes to be buried next to Hamish, his dog. I know too much, and worked for free for Cutting Through the Matrix. I even relocated to Texas 5 miles from her and her Seventh-day Adventist brother, where she located after Alan's death. There's so much more I could say here, but won't. This is why I quit uploading my produced Alan Watt vids, because he did not die in the manner that she has described to his audience. He was murdered. So she's pretty convinced. And I'm going, wow, okay. Again, I don't know. I don't have any evidence, opinion about it really, but she was there with Melissa, I think, for a year and a half. So now DeBess is responding to a person called a Loop J. DeBess says, no worries, Aloop J, and thanks for your reply. I worked face to face with Melissa in Texas, where she lives, with her brother for about 18 months and her sidekick, Kevin. I know too much. Alan's two sisters have the legal rights to his website, not Melissa, who was never legally married to Alan. Alan was never married and has no children. He had a black belt in karate, was on zero meds, and was in good health. She, Melissa, called me at my home in North Carolina at the time, a few days after Alan's death. She actually rented a car and drove to my place. We drove back together in my car to Texas, where I worked with her in uploading, producing the weekly Alan Watt blurbs. I also proofread her weekly writings. I have a background in journalism with a master's degree, plus clinical work in hospitals. Alan also wished to be buried beside Hamish, his big black dog in the backyard. I asked her why she didn't honor his wishes. I never got a straight answer on that question, and I began to understand and realize that there is much more to the story of Alan's death than we have been told. I could say a lot more, but I can't here. Alan kept every letter I wrote to him, according to Melissa. He began calling me at home shortly before the pandemic, always when Melissa was outdoors. I'm not sure exactly what the relationship was, except to say that she left her family, a brother and her great aunt in Texas, and took a bus to Sudbury, Ontario, where Alan picked her up in his car, which she had shipped down to Texas, as it is an antique that Alan did all of the mechanical work on. To her credit, Melissa arranged and got Alan some high-profile interviews, Alex Jones, Coast to Coast, but also remember that she had worked for Gary Barber, a top Zionist producer in Hollywood, and so she knows how to manipulate people to get whatever is needed. I have no ill feelings towards her now. All of that is behind me. However, Melissa will have to live with what she has done and what she is doing under the guise of preserving slash carrying on Alan's work. If she truly wished to carry on Alan's work, then she would not have filed copyright strikes on so many folks who were re-uploading Alan's work and not linking to the Cutting Through websites. Melissa is all about making money and supporting herself because she did not work enough to earn any Social Security, has no children, and she divorced the man that she was married to for a very short time. I could say a lot more, but won't. God bless. So here's the next one where DeBess is talking to a Loop J again. No worries, I'm with you on this, but I was unable to comprehend the complicity and evil involved at the time. After I saw what she was and still is, it makes sense. A Canadian friend of mine says he thinks she was sent there on a mission to do what eventually happened to Alan. According to her, Alan died in front of his computer screen. And I just stopped right there when I read that and I went, wait a minute. Melissa told me he died next to the bed with her asleep in bed, next to the bed reaching for a book. So I'm like, wow, okay, so now we got two jobs in 2 ways. Alan died. Let me see what else is said. According to her, he died in front of his computer screen after she retired for the evening and was awakened when she heard his body hit the floor. What was the cause of death? We will never know because no autopsy was done. She cremated his body and has some of his ashes in an urn. So a few months ago, I'm looking at this going, oh my gosh, Melissa, in these two regards, was not sincere or honest, either with me or with the best, but either way, there's a lie here somewhere. So I'm moving forward to see what else is here. So DeBess, here's Seamus Oshogru. Yeah, I posted a lot of Alan's talks on BitChute as well as my Facebook and never received any flack. I did receive an email from Melissa about a year after Alan's death telling me of her marriage to Alan and what had transpired. I have no reason to not believe her or what she had experienced being married to Alan and doing whatever. DeBess replies, Melissa and Alan were never married. You are being lied to. Alan was never married. His two sisters have the legal rights to the Cutting Through website. However, Melissa is paying big money to a law firm to make sure that Alan's two sisters do not acquire the legal rights to his work. Please look into some of my recent posts about all of this. All the best, DeBess. So now I'm getting another inconsistency because, again, Melissa had told me about this legal battle, but she gave me the impression that her lawyers and the law firm she was using were mediocre at best, literally. And now I'm finding out from DeBess, well, no, she's paying them big money. Now, how DeBess knows that, I don't know. I can only assume that conversations she and Melissa had. But so now I'm like, okay, now there's three inconsistencies. Okay. And so now DeBess I'm not sure who she's responding to here. She said, she lied to you. First off, Melissa and Alan were never married, although she was married previously. I worked for free for her and relocated to Texas for 1.5 years. I know her and I know her family and her acquaintances. I understand completely where you are coming from. Please know, though, that you are complicit if you, and there's nothing more there after that. So I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going on there. And so now DeBess is responding to a person called the New Brunswicker. He says, I've been reviewing Alan's work again on your channel lately. And DeBess says, thank you. I have no reason to lie about this. She, real name Melissa Reed, started blocking the Alan Watt vids I posted on DeBess after I left her in Texas and came back to North Carolina where I currently live. She also took down an excellent BitChute channel, Alan Watt Archive, who can be found at https://archive.org/details/Alan Watt Archive. DeBess says, why would you do this if you were truly interested in folks learning the truth? She worked in Hollywood for many years. Her boss was Zionist Gary Barber. I know all of this because she told me all this. Melissa, I know you have your shills and your own fake BitChute channel. Please help me understand why you were complicit in Alan's death. No autopsy? Why not? Is there something that you are trying to hide? Now, I, as I'm going over this, I'm thinking, okay, up until this point in time, Melissa's telling me that Debess is possessed. On the spiritual battlefield, she's a goner. She knows she's admits she's possessed, doesn't want to get, and I'm reading this thinking, well, Debess sounds pretty reasonable and rational to me here. But again, demons can sound reasonable and rational, and I thought, well, okay, Debeth shows showing me three very distinct inconsistencies with Melissa, her job, where Alan died, and this law firm business. So this is 3 months ago. Now I'm going to take you back, and this is what Melissa is melting down about 3 years ago that I did not take the time to look into. And Melissa's calling me and obsessing on DeBess. And as long as DeBess was there and helping her, DeBess could post whatever she wanted. But now DeBess is gone. And now Melissa has forbade her to post anything. And I believe DeBess's channel got, if not deleted, a lot of strikes. And DeBess had to remove Alan stuff. But I know that at that point she had 40 or 50,000 subscribers. And if you look at her channel now, it's only like 30,000 subscribers. So it's my thought that her channel was deleted and she rebuilt it and built her subscriptions up again. I could be wrong, just a guess. So I was just kind of taken aback when I saw this 3 months ago. I'm like, wow, this is really enlightening. But 3 years ago, I had no clue. So as I'm naively going along, it's this summer. I'm naively going along, desperate for a friendship with Melissa, waiting for her to call, because when I call there's never a pickup. It always goes to voicemail. So the only time I really communicate is through email, which could be 2, 3 times a week, text maybe once or twice a week. But it's nice to talk to a human voice. I'm thinking she's my friend. I know she's still got West in there. DeBess is gone, although she's calling me to have these meltdowns. So I'm desperate for a friendship with her. I have to wait for her to call me. I hear her telling me that she's sick and run down all the time, under attack. She's stalking DeBess and DeBess's sites. I thought, you're sick all the time. You're obsessing on things that don't matter. You can't sleep, etc., etc. You probably got crap inside that you need to deal with, right? And I remembered something that Alan had said quite a few times. And I said to her, I said, Melissa, Alan always said that we should work on ourselves first. And that's just how I said it. And I believe it was in the context of, why don't you drop dynamic independence? Why don't you stop writing your not sure article? Give yourself a minute to catch your breath, get settled into your house, etc. And so I said, Alan, I said we should work on ourselves first. And her reply was, not for us. And she said it just like that, with the emphasis on the word us, not for us. And I was really taken aback. This was a phone call. I remember us standing in my bedroom. And I just kind of stopped in the doorway. I think I was on the way out. I just kind of stopped and went, wow, okay. I thought, what an ego. I mean, everybody's got stuff they need to handle, whether it's shadow work or psychological work or whatever. It didn't even matter, because what she needed to stop and do was organize her life, move her parents' crap out of her house, and move her and Alan's stuff in. But she never took the time to do that. She was just obsessing on DeBess and get a website, not your article, and this interview and that interview, and I was like, Melissa, Alan, we said we should work on ourselves first, whether that's organizing your home or whatever. I'm sure people will understand if you only put up a redux once a week. but not for us. And the implication was that, oh no, her and Alan have this mission, this purpose. No, no, not for us. I was like, oh, wow, okay. So that was my first real inkling of a little bit of an ego going on there. And I just, when I let it go, I thought, okay, it's your world, it's your life, you do what you're gonna do. So now it's the summer, it's July 5th. She's happy after Independence Day. And frankly, I'm just at a very low point. I'm overtired. I've been pushing for a year and a half. And I'm going, yeah, Melissa, I know, and you don't need to. But she was. Haven't progressed further on the books still. She's got to call the designer, for the remaking of the Cutting Through books. And so in between contact with her, I'm thinking, well, okay, she's telling me over and over and over she can't sleep. She's not sleeping well. She's sick and run down all the time. I thought, oh my gosh, she told me that her bed was right next to her computer and her modem. I thought, why don't I send her a Faraday cage? She can at least have some protection around the modem until she can move her bed away or whatever she's going to do. Maybe that will help. Maybe she won't be so tired all the time or sick and run down and all that. So I sent her a Faraday cage. It was September 2nd. And so now it's the end of September. And I get this email from her. She's responding. I was telling her something about my family, and I was asking her, how are you feeling? Because she was sick again. So I do feel better. And she's telling me that she's having this nagging feeling that she wasn't doing enough, right? We get the reduxes, the not sures, the dynamic independence. I think she was doing a couple other things, but she's this nagging feeling that she wasn't doing enough, and that she feels as though Alan is breaking her down. I have this feeling like Alan is breaking me down to ready me for whatever comes next. She says she didn't want to get too woo-woo about it, but she feels like she's being pushed to do something else, in quotes. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You're not sleeping, you're sick and run down all the time, you're not even moved in, you won't take the time for yourself to work on yourself, and you're gonna add more to the mix that someone or something is pushing you to do more, that they're breaking you down. I'm like, you're really not taking care of yourself, Melissa, but I didn't say anything. So all through this time, Melissa is talking about being sick and run down and that, she needs money. She's not earning money. The donations aren't what they were when she was with the Allen. And I'm like, well, Melissa, no one knows you exist. So what are they going to donate to, right? So this is what happened next. Fortitude, her video introducing herself to the listeners. So as this is what, September, so it's a good year and a half after Alan died. And I was glad she did it. She sent me the audio that she recorded first. I listened to it. I thought it was beautiful. And then she posted it and I was able to see the video. So first thing Melissa did right out the gate, and I kind of bit my lip. She introduced herself as Alan's wife. And I was like, I don't know if you should do that. I mean, it's not true. You lived as his wife, sure, but you weren't his wife. I never said anything to her, but I got to thinking about it. I'm like, not only were you not his wife, but you were living up there under an assumed name as an illegal alien because that's what Alan wanted you to do. I I was like, I don't know, but I thought it's your world, it's your life, it's your business. You're gonna do what you want. So as I said, she had sent me the audio first. I thought it was beautiful. And then I watched it when she posted it. And so I sent her an email. I said, just wanted to let you know I saw the video, and the word that comes to mind now is beautiful. When I just listened to the audio, the word that came to mind was perfect. You didn't need to do anything else. It was just perfect. But after watching the video, all I can think of is beautiful. Everything was presented very beautifully. Thank you so much for the pictures of where she and Alan lived. And I said, and surprise, surprise, I didn't know I was going to get to see you. Because all this time, all this communication and getting to know each other, I didn't know what she looked like. She didn't know what I looked like. We never Zoomed, we never FaceTimed. It was always an email, a text, or um, a phone call, which is fine. That's the way the world ran before cell phones and all that. But so I was just telling her, and I said, so that was very nice. Hello, nice to meet you. I finally get to see you. Um, and so that was just giving her feedback about the Fortitude video. So now it's October, and Melissa is sick again, except this time now we have food poisoning. It's very violent and painful. Any effort, just exhausted her. And so now we have another big attack from DeBest. There's libel and defamation, and that Melissa conveniently had him cremated. I mean, y'all heard the comments DeBest made, and several other comments of similar nature to defame me. I've reported this as harassment under BitChute community guidelines, and says it's 2 days later and it's still up there. And she says, what's amazing about this sick or possessed woman is that seems to have forgotten that Melissa has a stack of emails begging Melissa to not give up on DeBess and DeBess's abuses, and to help DeBess find clergy to fight the evil in her and all that. And I'm like, wow, are you kidding me? I was just so glad that I didn't get in the middle or the mix of this, but I have to receive all this venting from Melissa. She's sick and tired, and Alan's pushing her to do more. And, she, all this stuff she's got going on. Alan's dead, her dad's dead, she's still not moved in. And I'm like, wow, you got a whole lot of chaos going in your life, and you choose not to do anything about it. I've sent you the Faraday cage. I'm hoping that does something, but still, anyway. So time is rolling on. So she's done Fortitude and posted it, and that was September. And so now it's January, and I get a call from Melissa telling me about a microphone that was great for podcasters. It's called a Yeti, and it's the best out there. So I'm getting this rock in my gut. Now, did she say to me, Diana, will you buy this for me? No. But she's doing it in any and every way. Oh, it's just awesome, and I can't afford to get it, and I wish I could get it, and yada yada yada. Yes, I'm getting this rock in my gut, going, well, okay, all right, you did your Fortitude, is beautiful. You need to advance Alan's work, and you want to interview people. She told me that. Okay, I bit the bullet. I felt like I had Alan in my ear. I didn't feel, I literally felt like Alan was saying to me, Diana, help her, help her, help her. She needs help, help her, help her, help her. And because Alan put her in this situation, I felt like I am your friend. Okay, so I sent it, right? So the next thing that happens is that she debuts Real History, January 19th. And I think about this, and her first real history was her talking about a cross-country trip. Now, this wasn't even the cross-country trip that she did to go pick up DeBess and bring her back to Texas. This was a second cross-country trip. I don't even remember what it was about, but I remember listening to this real history going, really? You just called me because you needed and wanted a Yeti. Did you ask for it? No, but you kind of implied it. I bit the bullet and bought it for you. And now I find out you're driving cross country again? Oh, okay. Wow. And I kind of brushed it out of my mind. I said, "Oh, okay, I'm not gonna say anything, whatever." But it just really, I just remember thinking that, listen, going, "Oh, wow, okay." So then time rolls on and it's February, and she asked if she wanted to interview me as the transcriber of Alan's talks. It was Real History number 4. And she interviewed me 3 times over the course of 3 years. Each one was in February of 2023, 2024, 2025. And I will say that all 3 of these videos are now memory hole. I'm not really sure why she took them off the website. She said all of them got great feedback. I had them on my website. I have video channels, YouTube, BitChute, and Rumble. But I have a website that's dedicated to helping people heal. And I put it on there as a way for people to get to know me because Melissa interviewed me. And Melissa had my website attacked. The website that's there to help people, not just, well, I'll get into what my website does down the road, but I was really shocked that Melissa would attack a website that is there and designed to help people heal from trauma. It was pulled for a little while. I don't even look at my own website because I'm busy. I'm not in it for money or views or traffic. Just if 5 or 10 or 100 people go there and learn something, that I'm happy for that. But Melissa attacked my website, had it shut down. When I finally figured it out after a couple of weeks, it took a day, literally, to have it put back up. But what it was Melissa forbidding me posting interviews of myself. It's like, wow, okay. So if anyone would like to ever see these, I have them in my hard drive here, and I could send you a copy through WeTransfer. But the reason I bring this up in Real History number 4, the transcriber, I talk about why my history of my life, why I transcribed, and what happened to me when I first found Alan Watt and watched his first video, Reality Check number 1. And these are the timestamps on the video where I talk about this, that I was in an altered state for 2 weeks. After I watched this video, I was literally in an altered state for 2 weeks. I remember the walls and the floors did not feel solid. I could still go about my day and do things, but I just did not feel like I was in my body. And when I was in my body, I felt like the world wasn't solid. That went on for about 2 weeks and then things settled down. Now, I also talk about being awakened psychically after watching Alan's video, Reality Check 1, and that after that, I had also had conversations with Alan for weeks. Now, this wasn't all day long every day. It was as I was in my house, cleaning house or out in the garden doing something, or it was generally when I was in my house or my garden. But I would be thinking about life and different things that had happened in my life, and I'd think, oh my gosh, Alan, is that what was going on with X, Y, and Z? And blah, 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 was the thoughts I was having. And I didn't really get a conversation back, but I felt as though Alan was with me and listening to me and guiding me in my thoughts. And like I said, this might have happened 2, 3, 4 times a week. It might have gone on for an hour or two at a time. And it went on for a couple of months. So I'm in an altered state for 2 weeks. Then I'm awakened psychically. I remember feeling as though Alan was communicating to me with various different things in my environment. And I even wrote him a letter asking him, and he said no. Um, and that I'm having conversations with Alan for weeks, and that as I'm talking to Melissa about the transcription booklets that I thought of, I told her it wasn't me that thought of it. I'm sitting here at my desk, and all of a sudden, Alan is standing right here next to me in spirit form. And he had a piece of paper in landscape position. He says, "Here's your paper, right?" He said, "Fold it in half." And he says, "There's your book." He said, "Fold it in half again. You got the long strip." He says, "Look what I can do with it. I can tuck it up my sleeve." He says, "I can take that long strip, fold that in half, and I can tuck that in my boot." He said, "It was for the transcription booklets. Now, my idea for it was for Melissa to be able to sell something to make money so that she wouldn't be calling me about Yetis, etc. Right? I'm already giving you $100 a month. And, anyway. So, but as Alan's telling me this, I mean, literally right here. And I'm getting the impression, he says, well, down the road in the future, there's going to come a point in time where this information might be illegal and that we might not even be able to have access to the internet. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know about all of that, but I just wanted Melissa to have a way to earn money. And so that's what it was. And that and at the hour 7 minute, Melissa and I are talking about the good angel Alan because he's standing here showing me the book. He's standing at my bedside telling me to trust myself about demonic influence in writings and books. He's, in various places. So we're talking about that he's a good spirit. And so that's what I wanted to point out about that reality check one. Now, at this point in my life, I was being drawn to Christianity. Now, as COVID hit, my mother-in-law needed help up in Oregon, so I went to Oregon to help her. January, before COVID happened in March. And while I was up there, I was watching a channel called The Great Courses, and in there was a section on biblical scholars, so I watched it. And I was listening to various different biblical scholars, and one talked about Gnosticism, and one talked about this and that and the other, and Origen and Irenaeus, and all the different church fathers down through time. And they had mentioned Michael Heiser. And so I looked into Michael Heiser and I bought a couple of his books. So I began studying the biblical scholar Michael Heiser, and I was talking to Melissa about it because I'm being drawn to Christianity. I'm listening to biblical scholars over several months during COVID when I wasn't at home doing transcriptions because I had the time for it. And now I'm reading Michael Heiser and I'm talking to her about it. And I told her, I said, Melissa, I'm not really listening to the reduxes because I had 17 years of listening to Alan's talk. I'd listened to Alan's talk 3 or 4 or 5 times each. I had enough repetition. I knew what Alan talked about. I didn't need any more. I told her, I said, I listened to your hour-long lead up to it, but I don't actually listen to the redux itself. And I said that I was exploring other things. I mean, 17 years is a long time, and I was just kind of relieved to be able to explore other things because Alan consumed a huge portion of my life. I would say 40 hours per week or more, including the regular life that I had to live, keeping my house clean, going shopping, working part-time. Eventually, I got to the point where I didn't have to work anymore, but it consumed a lot of my life, and I was just happy to not be absorbed in it. I learned everything I was going to learn, right? So I'm talking to Melissa about this and that I'm being drawn to Christianity and that I had always been compelled to be baptized. Now, this was not a recent phenomenon. I had been compelled to be baptized throughout most of my adult life. I had just never gone through with it. So now here I am. I'm married. My husband's a baptized Christian, and I'm exploring Christianity and listening to biblical scholars, trying to get a grip, figure it out, right? My big stumbling block was that I believed Jesus existed. I believed in the supernatural, but I never connected the supernatural with Jesus, God, and the Bible. I had never read the Bible. I tried once when I was like 14 and got totally confused. So now I'm being pulled back to it. I don't even say pulled to it. I'm drawn to it. The Lord is working on my heart. And I'm talking to Melissa about this. And so I get an email at 3:14 a.m. her time. And here's what it says. I'm going to paraphrase, but I will quote this first line here. It said, I just woke up and felt compelled to write. At 3:14 a.m. How many of you wake up at 3:14 a.m. and grab your phone and write an email? But she's compelled, right? And I'm thinking, and she said, oh, well, God must be compelling her, right? I said, she says that she could have waited and called, but where I'm at, she didn't think that I would get her by the sound of her voice, but that the written word would be more effective. And I'm going, what do you mean where I'm at? I'm feeling judged here. But I'm like, okay, well, she loves me. She's my friend. She's a Christian. She goes to church. She knows about spiritual warfare, right? And she's telling me that she thinks that my idea to be baptized by my husband at home is filled with symbolism, and it's a symbolic beginning, and that she says you might find that someday in the right band of followers of the example of Jesus that you are strengthened by having that decision publicly witnessed. And I'm going, well, because up until this point, I had been talking to Melissa about, yeah, I want to be baptized. I'm compelled to be baptized. And that I had called several churches to find out that I had to join the church, go through classes, jump through hoops. I had to be approved and get approval from strangers and do it in front of strangers and just go through this whole big process. And not only in that is that I would have to first have to figure out what church, who, what, where, when, why, and how. And I'm like, wow, that's just a whole lot of work. When I feel drawn to God right now, why do I have to go through that? And I was talking to my husband about it. He goes, well, Diana, you do know that any baptized Christian can baptize you. And I looked it up online, and yeah, that's true. And I said, well, then, honey, Chris, will you baptize me? And he was a little freaked out at first, I will say that, but he agreed to. And so we had it set up for Easter, which was a month away. Actually, no, I think it's more like 2 weeks away. So I'm telling Melissa all this, and she says, well, frankly, she was discouraged by our call, but that she recognizes that I'm on my path and that it might not be the same as her, but that the closest of followers are called to hold one another. So by followers, I think the closest of Christians and friends and people who love you, we're to hold one another and help you boost people up. And I'm like, okay, even though you're disappointed with my decision, you want to, hold one another. Anyway, so she says, when I found Alan many years ago, I was clear that this was my direct link to God, and that has never changed. All other voices and choices faded away. She feels that Alan's voice is the supernatural message for our time in our language, and that's why I also had a connection with Alan where I spoke with Alan in my mind and knew that Alan communicated in return, and that this is why I have a kindred connection to others who experience the same. And I'm like, well, the only other person that I know of that talks to Alan every day, and I didn't, is Melissa. So who are these people? I don't know. So it's her way of saying that's why we have a connection. Because we both experienced this. And I'm like, yeah, 20 years ago when that happened, it was actually in 2008, however many years ago that is. It was for a few hours, a few times a week for a couple of months. And all that went away. Now, did I have Alan what in my ear every day? 5 days a week, 40 hours a week? Yeah, I did. I had Alan in my ear for 17 years. But was I talking back and forth with him? No. So Melissa continues on here. So she's saying this is why you have a kindred connection with others who experience the same. I'm like, well, you're the only person, Melissa. Okay, so this is why she and I have this connection. And there were times where we were psychically connected. I knew she was about to call or something, right? So she's saying that Alan's message was nearly identical to that of Jesus in calling out the evil in this world and stating that it will always be that way. I'm like, wow, well, that's not very hopeful. And that's why people will always be drawn to Alan because of that message, that his message is just as powerful and it's nearly identical to that of Jesus. Look, well, I don't know about that because I don't know much about Jesus or what he talked about. I hadn't read the Bible yet. She says, maybe it's just where you are, okay, that you no longer feel the need to listen into the reduxes, or maybe because he's dead, that I don't talk to him all day long as I did before. Well, I never did. And I don't need his voice. No, I don't. I learned everything I was going to learn from him. 17 years listening to all of his talks, three, four, five times each. I got it. I'm full. I understand it, right? But she's kind of saying, you should be listening to the, and here's what she says. That when she talked to me from Canada, that she remembered telling me to continue having that conversation with Alan. And in that way, I would not be led astray. So I'm looking at this now. At the time when I first got it, I was like, oh my gosh, she's guiding me, even though I'm getting mixed messages here and I'm feeling a little judged where I'm at and disappointed because my husband's going to baptize me. But I'm going to be led astray and unless I stay connected with her and with Alan and so because I don't know anything about Christianity really yet. I just know I'm drawn to be baptized and I'm going to follow that. So she goes into this 2 paragraph tirade about Michael Heiser, that biblical scholar I was talking to you about. Now, he's on the bad guy's side and that he is inverting Jesus's message. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I never looked into this, that, and the other. And oh my God. So I'm feeling like Melissa's pulling me off the edge of a cliff. Wow, okay. And and so she also talks about in her experience, that mystical experience of God, the union that Alan said, the yearning that Alan said can't be taken away when you take away religion. She says, can only be accessed as described by Alan. So, in my experience, the mystical experience of God, that blissful union that is the yearning, Alan said, cannot be removed from us when they take away religion, can only be accessed as described by Alan, and then in parentheses, or the red letters, which are the words of Jesus, and that painful journey into the depths of our own mind, we come face to face with our own choices, and then there's many mystical, connections, and etc., etc., and the inward journey. And so she's going on, and I'm like, wow, you know, I don't even know how to take this email. Had so many mixed emotions and different feelings going on with it. It really confused me. But I'm thinking, Melissa's my friend. She's a Christian. I guess I'm going to follow her lead. Am I going to be listening to the Reduxes anymore? No. I'm still doing transcripts, which means I'm listening to Alan still. I'm getting burned out on it. I'm looking forward to being finished with it, right? So she ends it off saying that her path is of Christianity is one of unorthodoxy, to be sure, and that she finds the lie with all organized Christianity is without exception is raising Jesus up to the Son of God, that the search for a connection with our Creator is the most important journey, and that Alan's words resonate for those of us yearning for a supernatural experience in this life. So, those of us yearning for a supernatural experience, I'm going to take that to mean that she's yearning for supernatural experiences because I'm not particularly, I just want to be baptized, right? She says, I simply never trusted any voice but Alan's from the moment I heard him, and I still don't. And that she's rooting for me. And I'm like, wow, okay, that's a whole lot of crap going on there when all I want to do is be baptized and talk to my friend about it. Okay. I'm getting judged. I'm being pulled off a cliff because the guy that I'm studying is bad. And, I need to listen to all day long, or if I don't listen to Alan all day long, I'm going to be led astray. It's just a whole lot of insanity here. And so I'm thinking about this as I'm doing the presentation. I'm going, well, 3 a.m., that's the witching hour. That's the point in time of the day where the veil between this world and the supernatural world is the thinnest. It's believed that the boundary between the world and the paranormal world is the thinnest at this time. Demons and spirits of the dark are said to be able to cross our world at this time. So I'm going, wow, that's interesting. It was 3 a.m. And so now it's 8:45 in the morning. She sends me another email because I did not respond to that. I'm like trying to digest it and figure it out. I think I read it 2 or 3 times. And she's telling me why Alan stayed with the historical agenda and that me doing the transcripts was blah de blah, good for the world and whatever. And she said, well, that being said, people take breaks from Alan. And I'm like, oh, well, thank you for your blessing, is what I remember thinking. Anyway, but she says, I just know that modern Christianity is a minefield. And I'm going, wow, here we go again, and that she wants the best for me, meaning my soul and my spirit. So she's disagreeing, she's disappointed, but she wants the best for my soul and my spirit. So apparently that's not being baptized by my husband, and it must include Alan Watt listening to and talking to him all day, every day, and to her reduxes and having Alan in my ear 24/7. And I'm like, no, I'm done. I'm burnt out. I'm going to take a break. And I guess I'm getting her blessing. That being said, people take breaks from Alan. Well, thank you. Anyway, so I'm compelled to be baptized. My husband and I have it scheduled for Easter of 2023. And it's now April 9th, the morning of Easter, and my husband baptized me in our tub. It was me, my little doggy Dixie, my husband, Jesus, the angels witnessed it. And that's all I needed. That was enough for me. And I had a supernatural experience. Um, so I'm solidly a Christian now and have been studying the Bible ever since. 2 solid years. I'm on my third time through with a Bible companion. So, anyhow, I'm a baptized Christian. So we'll take you back into the timeline of April of 23. Now, I don't know how it was the spring of 23, how soon after I was baptized, but not too long, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. Melissa calls me and we're chatting, and I don't even remember what we were talking about. I happened to be out in the garage doing something, and she says, "Well, guess what? Did I ever tell you that when I was packing up Alan's things to move down to the state?" She says, "I found his baptismal papers and that he was 30 years old." And I'm like, "Oh my God, wow. I had no idea he never let on." I thought that was cool because now I'm thinking, "Oh my God, I'm part of this cool Christian group of people, my husband, me, Melissa, and Alan now. I'm not real interested in going to a church and doing that, but my interest is in studying at home on my own, interacting with my husband, and finding other people out there online or on YouTube that know about the supernatural." And so that's what I'm interested in. And so I'm like, "Oh my gosh, Alan was a Christian. That's fantastic." Right? So, okay, time moves. And she's like, "Yeah, I found his baptismal papers, yada, yada, yada." I'm like, "Awesome."